Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games. Welcome to PHLY Flyers, presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Company NMLSID number 1464766. I am joined today live and in living color by the one and only Philadelphia's #1 beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor.
No longer sick. I am finally back in studio. It's been a while. It's
been a long time since you've been here, Charlie. We have a fridge of Olipop now.
Oh, we do. That's awesome.
That's pretty much the only thing that's changed.
Okay.
That's it.
That's a pretty significant change.
It is. It's really tempting, honestly. Last night during post game, I finished my ice cold, delicious Coors Light and was like, still want something else. Oh, I might go over there, but
you're not wearing the dog mask, so you can actually drink the drinks.
Oh man, I was hoping to wear the dog mask last night. It was not to be, Charlie. We are in it. This is our trade deadline preview show. Yep. It is here. The deadline is Friday at 3 p.m.
72 hours away.
A few months ago, I would have told you this was the entire point of the season was this week. Things have changed. Yeah. There are other points to the season. This isn't the only one, but it's still a pretty significant deal here, what the Flyers may or may not do. But I want to start out with not so much last night's game, because I want to forget I wasted time watching that game. It was decent at the end. But the Flyers coming up on this really tough stretch of games.
Yeah.
The next 10 games I want to look at specifically, and we actually have the graphic for you here. At Florida, then the trade deadline, followed by at Tampa, versus San Jose, versus Toronto, at Boston, versus Toronto again, at Carolina, versus Boston, versus Florida, at the Rangers, and then a couple of gimmies that they'll probably sweep this and then lose those two at the end.
It's basically the only easy game in this stretch is that San Jose game.
Which, of course.
Watch them lose it. They're going to get swept by the Sharks this season somehow. But aside from that, the other 9 games, and again, ignoring the Montreal-Chicago games, they should be wins, but we'll see where that goes. The other 9 games, these are really tough teams.
And with that said, it's a really tough stretch. So we can easily, especially after that Florida game, trade deadline, maybe they end up selling everybody. Maybe Laughton's out of here. Maybe they lose 2 or 3 defensemen. Who's to say? I am looking at this stretch and thinking, though, unless they go 0 for 10, or just look at these standings, man. Who is supplanting them? Who is this team that magically all of a sudden isn't going to suck?
Yeah.
Because that's what, the Rangers the Devils, finally fired Lindy Ruff. They have 64 points. The Flyers have 7. Decent in the game against the Flyers, but the Flyers just kind of sucked that day.
Well, the
Islanders
are the team in my mind.
But they're not good either.
That's the big thing, is that I look at them and I see a team that isn't that good. When the Flyers have played, and the Flyers, even when they haven't won, they have substantially outplayed them. They have been the clear better team when they have played the New York Islanders. I'm personally not really sold on Patrick Waugh as a coach based on his tenure in Colorado. I know there's surmising, and I haven't watched the Islanders since he's taken over, so I can't speak to the way they play. What I know is that under Colorado, they were outshot and outchanced. When he was in Colorado, his team was outshot and outchanced dramatically. Maybe he got better when he went back to the Q and became a successful coach there. I'm just skeptical. The Islanders also, if you look at their win-loss record,
14 overtime losses.
So if you're just looking at wins and losses, they are 26-34. That ain't good.
No.
Now, yes, overtime shootout, it's a little bit more fluky, especially the shootout, as I spoke to last night. But I look at that record and I don't see a great team. The thing about this month is that if it was the Flyers in third being chased by the Devils and the Penguins, I would be like, well, shit. Especially the Devils. Penguins have the high-end talent the Flyers don't have. They don't have the depth, but they certainly have the stars. The Devils have the stars and have decent depth. Maybe not as much defensive depth as they thought they were going to have, because they didn't think they were going to lose Dougie Hamilton for the rest of the year. But they're a good team on paper. They're just a mess to the point where they fired their head coach yesterday. So if it was those two teams chasing the Flyers, I would be thinking, Flyers might not be able to hold these guys off. They have a tough slate coming. If it's the Capitals and the Islanders in particular seem to be the team that has the best chance based on everything we're looking at in terms of the standings and their upcoming schedule and whatnot, I think the Flyers are better than the Islanders. I just do.
No, they're considerably better. And like the Devils, maybe they get that boost. Maybe they finally get the boost they need through firing the coach, and that sends them on a little bit of a run. But unless they get a deal done for a goalie, like how will they change substantially what they are?
Yeah, and again, sometimes the coaching changes do deliver that bump. Maybe we've talked about Edmonton. Edmonton was getting terrible goaltending. They fire their coach. They bring in a new one.
They win 20 in a row.
Suddenly the goaltending starts playing well because goaltending is random and bullshit. And maybe that can happen to the Devils. That said, I do think Edmonton had better talent goalies going in than the Devils do.
That's the Devils always needed a goalie. Edmonton, it was like, with like the talent they have up front, they can probably get by.
And also, the goalies they had were just better in theory.
Stuart Skinner's
okay. They weren't playing like it, but they talent-wise, you would say they're better than like Vanacek and Nico Dawes and whoever else they threw out there.
Some dude who just showed up last year.
But so looking at the data from Dom Luszczyszyn's model at The Athletic, his model very much seems to believe that the Islanders are the biggest threat. So his model has the Rangers at 100% to make the playoffs. He has the Hurricanes at 100% to make the playoffs. He has the Flyers at 57%, and he has the Islanders at 54%. So his model seems to be swinging around on the idea that it's going to be one of those two teams. He's got the Penguins at 22%, the Devils at 15%, the Capitals, even though they're above those two teams, he has the Capitals at 14%. So the Athletics model seems to believe it's Flyers, Islanders, and I'm not going to lie, between those two teams, it's not even that I think the Flyers are that great. No. It's that I think the Islanders are not good.
Like, we can talk about win-loss record. Like, if you just look at pure win-loss, the Flyers are 32-31.
Yeah.
But, like, that's considerably better than, like, the 8 games below 500 that the Islanders are.
Exactly.
Honestly, though, if someone does track down the Flyers, if it's the Islanders, and they make the playoffs at what will be below 500, maybe that's finally the impetus for, if not eliminating the loser point, going 3-2-1, like something to make sure that this sort of dumb thing doesn't happen again. But what will happen is the Islanders then win a round. And then the league goes, see, anything can happen when you get in.
Exactly.
That's what makes our league great. It's the parity that we force. Like,
we shall see. My point is that
mad about something that hasn't happened yet, Charlie.
But like, these 10 games are going to be huge. However, they're less huge, and I noted this in my column after last night's game. They're less huge if no one else plays well enough to take advantage of the facts of the Flyers possibly slipping, which they're not necessarily going to do. It's just possible.
It's definitely possible. They've also played very well against good teams this year. Now, the teams that I've mentioned are some really, really good teams, and they've played some bad games against those teams as well. So we'll see how it all turns out. And now I got to take a quick second to tell you about PHLY Sports Trips.
Yeah.
We are off to Clearwater. It's happening real soon, fam. So you got to get in on this. We're off to Clearwater with PHLY Sports Trips for our very first PHLY Spring Training Takeover. It is going to be a hell of a time, March 13th to the 18th. Really, really fun. We were just talking to Jamie Lynch about it. They're going to get to go down, our PHLY Phillies crew. It's going to be absolutely freaking
John Foley's
awesome.
Already down there. So, and that's going to be a blast. One thing I will say also, and this is purely a selfish pitch, the more people that go on this trip, the better chance we have of getting Flyers-centric PHLY Sports trips.
You know, I've heard tell of the possibility of maybe going to an event at a rounded facility sometime, maybe in the desert in like late June.
I wonder what that could be.
If you want to make that happen, the best way to do it is to support this PHLY Sports Trip to Clearwater. It's going to be an awesome time. PHLY Sports Trips plans the whole experience out, from flights to hotels to game tickets and transportation. I've been down to spring training a few times. It's great. I've never got to go for St. Patty's Day. You will be there over St. Patty's Day. You'll spend it on a private yacht with catered dinner and drinks. That sounds absolutely phenomenal. Be on the lookout for more events throughout the year with PHLY Sports Trips. Our trip is March 13th to the 18th, so don't wait to book. It's coming, fam. It's coming. Head to allphly.com/events to learn more and book your trip right now. All right. So these next 10 games, it is funny that like when we started talking about this stretch, really going back to the last Rangers game all the way through this next one at the end of the month, like it seemed like it was going to be the biggest deal in the world, 3 or 4. And it might be. Listen, if they go 0 for 10, they're missing the playoffs.
Yeah, of course.
But this team keeps showing its resilience. It doesn't feel nearly as big other than, man, I really don't want to watch like 7 losses in 2 weeks.
I guess to me, it's not even that they're showing their resilience, because I do think the Flyers, and this was the focus of my column after last night's game, I think the Flyers are showing some cracks.
Oh,
they're
sure.
They're 3-4-2 in their last 9, really since that Toronto game. They had that 4-game winning streak right out of the All-Star break. Since that Toronto game, they lost in overtime. They've been 3-4-2. They're still driving play, but they're just not as consistent as they were in January, where they're a team that has good periods. They don't really have good games. They have good periods here and there, and then they will dip, and then they will come back. And maybe that's just the nature of it getting to the end of the season. The games are tougher, and it's harder to control play for extremely long stretches or entire games. Or maybe it's that they're dipping a bit. I tend to think it's more the latter. So for me, it's less that I trust the team so much, and it's more that I thought I was going to be more worried about the teams chasing them. And it's just that those teams don't scare me as much as they did even 3 weeks ago. Like when the Flyers lost to the Devils in the Stadium Series game, my first thought was, this is when they're going to get it going. Yep. And then they just fell apart, and now they just fired their coach.
They only beat the Flyers. Like, they've basically lost every other game.
Exactly.
They lose to horrible teams on a regular basis.
Yeah.
The Devils are not good.
Yeah.
They have a ton of good players, and they will have a real good run.
Yeah.
It ain't starting this year,
They have talented players.
Yeah.
They are not a great team.
No. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this, the whole Metro really plays out. And I'm looking forward to the Flyers, honestly, as we approach the trade deadline on Friday, selling to teams below them in the standings. Like, that's really going to make me laugh if that happens. But I do want to get to some of that now. And it starts with, well, I guess before we do that, I did want to respond to your point that they're dipping. The team is not performing the way it did.
They're not playing as well as they were.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. Also, 3 guys that started the year in their top 6 are either non-factors or out hurt.
True.
Like Sean Couturier is on the 4th line. Cam Atkinson might as well be a healthy scratch.
Yeah.
And the best player, the best player in the team, Travis Konechny's out.
Yeah.
You also lost Drysdale. I realize he wasn't playing great, but he's a talented guy.
Yeah, he's
and
better than
Rasmus
Mark Stahl.
Ristolainen hasn't been around for months.
Yeah.
Like, these are 5 guys that you were in January thinking were going to be a pretty big part of this thing.
It's a really good point. They do seem to be optimistic about Travis Konechny. He practiced yesterday with a non-contact jersey. I was there. He skated quite a lot. They ran him pretty hard after practice. He looked relatively fine. Danny Briere, I was in D.C. We got Danny Briere after the first period. He expressed optimism on Friday of last week that Konechny could potentially be back for Thursday's game against the Panthers. Obviously, that's the first game of this gauntlet. I have to wonder if that was intentional, or you're thinking, maybe we can beat the Blues without TK. Let's give them a few extra days. Obviously, they didn't. They did get a point out of it. But give them a few extra days before the games get real tough. Wouldn't be shocked if that played into the thinking a little bit. If they get Travis Konechny back for this run, that will help. Will it help enough for them to roll through all of these great teams? I'm skeptical, but it's not going to hurt.
I'm just looking forward to Travis Konechny's return because there are so many opportunities, even just like when they're playing poorly in a period. Like if he just had that one TK shift that could either score a goal or change the momentum, just give you a little something. And honestly, from an entertainment factor,
he's fun.
Man, he's real fun to watch.
He's a real fun player to watch.
All right, so the trade deadline stuff. Charlie, you have been
launching into trade deadline chatter. This will be the next half an hour, most likely.
This is the show now.
This is the show.
You have been harping on since, the summer. Let's not get angry about things that haven't happened yet. And you've been hitting it hard on Twitter this week because people are freaking out, and it really makes sense. We don't have Coors Light today, but it really makes sense that their big thing is chill. Yeah. Because I could write read after read about how I'm feeling right now. Yesterday was the first time I really needed to chill because I'm starting to I listen to 32. I read everyone what they're saying.
Yeah, of course.
I get up a little later than everyone usually. So I listen to 30,
you probably stay up a little later than most people.
I listened to 32 Thoughts after I read all the freakouts.
Right.
And I don't think it was nearly as bad as everyone treated it. But this better be an awesome game of poker that Danny's playing. He better be really confident that this game of chicken is going to pay off, and it very well could. We were talking before the show, like, yeah, man, if I'm negotiating with Edmonton, it's like, I guess you don't want that cup, huh, Connor McDavid? I guess you want Draisaitl to leave when you guys don't do shit throughout their whole contracts? Okay. Guess you don't want that cup. Good for him. If he's playing it that way, he needs to. I believe in Danny Briere until I'm given a reason not to. So far, so good. Charlie, I know you don't want to get into what hasn't happened, but the idea that they could potentially not sell any of either of Seeler or Walker is concerning. No, like that's a, if they did neither, that would be grounds for, at the very least, some concern.
I think it would be grounds for questioning what their actual plan is. I think that, to me, is the key thing, because if you don't trade away anyone at this deadline and you just say, even if it's not even that you re-sign anybody, if it's just, well, we're keeping our guys because they deserve it and they deserve to keep the team together, I think that actually would be received well by certain sections of the fan base. It would not be received well by the Twitter section of the fan base, and probably not by a lot of the people that listen to our show. But I do, like, for example, I had a conversation with my father, who is a Flyers fan, last week, and his opinion is, these guys, you don't know how many cracks you get at it. This team deserves a shot at showing what they can do in the playoffs. They shouldn't be broken up. It's not right. And I suspect there is a much larger contingent of fans that are not on social media who would very much agree with that strategy. However, the Flyers have been saying all year they are rebuilding. And if you are going to say all year you are rebuilding, and you have two guys who are expiring contracts, who are either in their 30s or soon to be in their 30s, and you don't trade away either of them, even while you have made it clear you don't think this team is a Stanley Cup contender, it becomes very reasonable to ask, okay, then what is actually the plan?
That's for an organization that worked really hard after the Chuck Fletcher era to kind of win back some trust from the fan base. We're going to be more transparent. We recognize where we have to rebuild. Keith Jones told us, 2 weeks ago, that they can't win the Stanley Cup this year?
Exactly.
Like, he basically said it.
Yeah.
That when we were talking to him about Scott Laughton, he was like, listen, a team that's going to give up what we want for Scott Laughton, because we don't want to trade him, but it's going to be an overpay, they have designs on winning the Cup this year or next year, which, you listen to what he's saying, means the Flyers do not have designs on winning the Cup this year or next year. Then, you can't possibly... it's just really going to boil my blood if we got sold a bill of goods here, because I gave them the benefit of the doubt.
And what I will say, too, and this is, I think that if they punt on the trade deadline, it will be serious reason for questioning what the plan is. I will say that, for example, if you re-sign Shawn Walker, I have to assume, and maybe it's not, maybe they're just going to keep all the defensemen and just figure it out, which I have no idea how that would work. But you would assume that if you sign back Shawn Walker, at some point in the next 6 months, you're going to be trading Rasmus Dahlin, because it doesn't make any sense to keep both of them. But what that does, if you do that, if you do say re-sign Shawn Walker, then you have 4 months of fans being like, how does any of this make any sense?
And you also basically send up a big alert
that you need to trade.
We got to trade a defenseman.
Exactly, you lose your leverage.
Now all of a sudden, you're the team with the leverage right now. You have these guys that people want in the summer when there's no Stanley Cup at stake. Listen, it'll make sense more if there are ensuing moves, but let's get to the individual guys. Let's start it with Nick Seeler. Now, practice was canceled today, so there's probably no update on his...
I believe Kevin Kurz tweeted something out that he might miss a little bit of time, but it's not believed to be long-term. So there we go. I know you don't believe anything because you think everyone's at Ellis Island.
No, listen, I wasn't even going there. Honestly, I wasn't even going he's probably, if you saw the Iron Claw, oh, yeah, he lost his foot. We're going to hide it. We're just going to put a boot on him and teach him to play with one foot.
Oh, my God.
But no, it's just this is the risk. And I did have somebody tweet me like a couple of days ago, like, they got to get shit going now because the risk of injury, and especially pointing out the way Nick Seeler plays, is very, very high.
Yeah, and from what Pierre LeBrun reported after the Christopher Tanev deal that happened last week, one of the reasons why he claimed that Calgary made that deal when they did was because they were afraid the way he plays, he might get hurt, and then suddenly we can't trade him at all. So that is a factor. The difference between Calgary and the Flyers, though, is that Calgary is probably not going to make the playoffs. The Flyers are in a playoff spot. They're viewing this as, because of where they are not going to sit guys for trade reasons.
Yeah. No, and that makes sense.
Not gonna do it.
I never wanted anyone to sit, honestly. Like, that's just not a thing in hockey.
It's just something to worry about.
Wenberg got benched last night for trade-related reasons, but like the league honestly doesn't like it. They're like, yeah, if there's like a trade pending, sure. Otherwise, you get your fucking guys in there. I understand that, but what do you think happens with Nick Seeler? Like, if anyone stays, is it probably him?
I said on the show yesterday that I've been operating on the assumption for a while that I think they're going to bring back Nick Seeler.
They basically told us they want to.
They definitely want to. It does seem like Seeler at the moment is asking for more than they are willing to give. However,
as he should.
However, Nick Seeler, like, I was not in on this conversation. Kevin Kurtz did an article on Nick Seeler highlighting him. He talked to him in a one-on-one conversation. I believe it was yesterday. And basically Seeler more or less said, I want to be a Flyer. Like, you know, I did read that. I want to stay. I don't want to test free agency. I want to be a Flyer. I asked Shawn Walker that same thing a couple weeks ago, and Shawn Walker basically said, I'm just going to leave all that to my agent. The difference between the two responses, you have one guy saying, I'm going to just have my agent deal with that, which is more or less saying, I want to get as much money as I can. And then you have another guy saying, I really want to be here. It just strikes me as Seeler is the more likely one to cave to the Flyers' direction in terms of what they want to pay him, which just seems to me making it more likely that he's the one who will sign.
And like, listen, I hope for both of these guys to get the Andrew McDonald contract from one of 31 other teams. But like, just looking at the way these two guys' careers have gone and the way they play, like, Walker is the one more likely to get a big deal.
Yes.
Like, Seeler is the one that hockey men probably love, but you have to know.
No, you know.
We cannot give this guy $4 or $5 million.
He has one goal this year. He's he's averaging like 16, 17 minutes a night. Even as much as they love the intangibles, and trust me, hockey men fucking love the intangibles of Nick Seeler. They love the guy.
Yes.
He's like, if you could make a hockey man player in a lab, it would be Nick Seeler. But they know he's not worth that much money because he just doesn't have the numbers to justify it.
These two as a pair are like the perfect combination of dudes. I can absolutely see a team wanting to trade for the pair. Like, that makes sense to me.
It does make sense.
Like, okay, Seeler, can he move the puck? Not really, but Walker can. Walker does a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
And when someone takes a run at Walker on the forecheck, Nick Seeler's going to go over and crack him over the head.
Yeah.
Like, it's the perfect combination.
Yeah, and Seeler's going to block every shot he sees.
Yeah.
Like, not that Walker doesn't block shots. He blocks shots sometimes, but not nearly as much as freaking Nick Seeler does.
Nobody blocks more shots than Nick Seeler. Like, I've never seen it. Like, Lassie Kukkonen, who I loved.
Nick Grossman was a big shot blocker.
Grossman was just kind of there.
Seeler can skate better than Grossman could, though.
You can skate better.
Well, yeah. Grossman was playing on like two screwed up knees by the end.
He had no legs.
Yeah, he was the bionic man. But anyway,
go ahead.
Going back to Seeler, I still am operating in the assumption that he will be re-signed. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility he gets traded, though. And they're certainly listening. And Seeler is a guy that plausibly a team could overpay for because, as I said, hockey men love the dude. They watch him. They like salivate over the shot blocks. It's like the greatest thing. They love it so much.
Him coming back out last night, like, oh, yeah, you have to throw in an extra asset.
Exactly.
That's who he is.
That's what Nick Seeler is.
Yep.
I mean, to me, Walker has always been the more likely one to be traded. Seeler is out there. They're listening. And maybe there is a situation, because you mentioned about the idea of packaging the two together. Maybe there's a situation where a team throws a ton at the Flyers to do that. And I think they would do it if they're getting back a guy they view as a potential top sixer or, a first round pick plus or something like that. If there's a really, really good package that's out there for both of them, I think they consider it. But I still lean more towards the idea that they'll find a way to bring Nick Seeler back.
Seeler is in the Laughton territory where it's like, yeah, man, if you do something stupid, you can have him.
I just think they view him as so integral to the culture they want. And again, this is me speaking towards what I think, where I think their heads are at. It's not where my head is necessarily at. I personally would trade Nick Seeler, but their view of this rebuild is there's a high emphasis upon the culture. There's a high emphasis upon building the team that they feel like can be sustainable for 10 years to come. And while a lot of people look at that and say, well, that means getting assets because that means you have to get draft picks to be able to get better. Yes, it does. But for them, they view it as if we lose the culture, then the whole thing's going to fall apart anyway. So we have to value that. And they think Nick Seeler is an integral part of setting the kind of example that leads to the kind of self-sacrificial nature that they want this team to have. That's just the way they view it.
I can understand that. But at the same time, when you talk about opening up a long window, you know whose window isn't long? The 31-year-old defenseman whose marquee is getting hit.
You're absolutely right.
Getting hit with pucks, throwing his body around.
You're 100% right.
Those two things don't necessarily match. I understand exactly. And I know you're making the point that they're making. This is not your argument.
Their argument is that even though his shelf life is probably not that long, he doesn't have that many more years of being a useful defenseman, they believe that the culture will last long after he is gone because his influence will change the way that Cam York thinks on the ice and change the way that Emil Andre thinks on the ice and the way that Oliver Bonk maybe thinks on the ice, depending on how quickly. And then his influence will linger on through them. That's the way they look at it.
Like, I just look at these two guys, Seeler and Walker, and the deals. Like, I heard something come up where, like, Walker really wants a 5th year. I was like, I really want a fucking $1 million to do this job. And I was like, even if they re-sign one of these two guys, the idea of overlap with Michkov is laughable to me. But we'll see how that works out. Just Seeler, though, man, like, I get it. And I do see some of that. I tweeted last night, like, teach Cam York to fight, and the who plays Nick Seeler's role question is answered by a dude who can do other stuff too. He has been a puck magnet recently.
Yeah, he's
the shot blocking, the rush defense. He has been really, really good defensively lately. He had 7 blocks the other night. I think last night he had 4 or 5. Like, he's kind of rounding Cam York. Now, maybe that's just he had that in him. Maybe it is the example Nick Seeler said.
That's what they would say.
I understand their argument. Yeah. I just think the most important thing is having really, really good players.
I agree.
And then teaching them to, like, play more like assholes. You know, like, that's
and I don't disagree. They would argue that teaching has to come from within, from the room, from Cam York watching someone like Nick Seeler, block a big shot, hobble back to the bench and get, rousing cheers from the entire bench, and then Cam York on some subconscious level thinks,
I want those cheers.
I want those cheers.
Yeah.
And then over time, he gets hardwired into doing those things. That's what they believe. And that's why they, I think, are going to try their best to lock down Nick Seeler. We'll see if they can pull it off, but I do think that's where they see the value in Nick Seeler, even as a guy in his early 30s who maybe doesn't have that many years left in the NHL.
Maybe more so, and we'll move on to Walker in a second. Maybe more so than the asset they can get for Nick Seeler. Because, yeah, maybe some idiot overpays for what Nick Seeler gives you, but it's probably not going to be a premium asset.
It's not going to kill them if they keep Nick Seeler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're not losing out on, like, something.
It'd be great to get another third.
My biggest concern may be a repeat of the mistakes we've seen of the past.
Fair.
We like this thing, so we're going to keep it. And the price is what the price is. Yeah. And it's like, that price is going to prevent you from pursuing something you really need. Yeah. Like having like the Risto contract. Like
the Risto contract is a perfect example.
The Risto contract, that conversation is what I am repeating right now.
Which is completely fair.
Like, you like what you have and you've turned him into something. He's a third pair defenseman at $5 million,
he's
though.
Still
that's
overpaid.
Fucking killing you.
Yeah, he's still overpaid.
Yeah, like that's... If he's still on the roster, or at $4 million, Nick Seeler's on the roster, and Matvei Michkov gets here, and it's like, yeah, we still need a 1C. We don't know how we're going to get him, though.
Yeah.
And we can't afford one. Like, oh, you know how you could have prevented this by having $4 extra million open?
No, it's a reasonable point because the Risto contract is a perfect example because in a lot of ways, the way this Ristolainen thing has played out has been pretty close to not like the best case scenario, but like we're talking about like at least 80th percentile best case scenario in terms of them turning him into a very useful play driving defensive defenseman. I personally did not think that was possible.
2 years ago, he sucked.
Yes. But even with that 80th percentile, like very strong case scenario, they still are left with an overpaid third pair defenseman who gets hurt a lot.
Yeah.
Like, and this is when like it played out well.
Yeah.
Imagine how we would have won if it played out poorly.
This is like a B. Like, they get like a B for how it's, and it's like, it's still not good.
Yeah, it's still not good. It's just better than the alternative.
Yeah, it's just not an F.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I do think that the Ristolainen contract is it's a cautionary tale as to how the Seeler thing can play out. I just don't think they view it that way. I think they like Nick Seeler so much. We'll see how it plays out. If I had to bet money, I would bet they sign Nick Seeler this week. That's my guess.
The Flyers fan in me that like watches them this year and says, I like a lot of what I'm seeing. Hopes Nick Seeler can be a part of this thing. The person who's watched this story play out like 10 times already is like, what the fuck are they thinking?
Yeah. Someone who has lived through the last 10 years of Flyers
like we've
hockey.
been doing this together since 2016. We worked in the space separately before that. You know what's never gone right? Anything for the Flyers at this time. Before we move on to Shawn Walker, I got to tell you about our newest partner, Empire Today.
Heyo.
If you're looking for new flooring, you got to do it with our boys over at Empire. With Empire Today, you get shop-at-home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. Empire Today, you know that they're the best place to get new flooring, so of course, they've got copycats, but the copycats can't beat Empire Today on quality, service, speed. So you know what they do? They advertise low-quality products that Empire simply won't carry. Empire Today won't promise the lowest prices because anyone who does is putting flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in their own. The Empire philosophy is to help you find what you need, not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is as important as what they put in. Empire's product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to help find the perfect styles. And their virtual floor designer is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's easy. All you have to do is snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your room. So schedule a free in-home installation, a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/PHLY for details. 1-800-588-2300. Empire Today. It's great. I love it. Best.
I love it so much.
All right, so Shawn Walker, it seems if any one guy is going to be traded, it's Shawn Walker. There is the most noise about Shawn Walker.
That's where my head's at.
He will be the most expensive probably to retain. He is going to play all next year at 30. He has not made that much money in his career. If I was him, I'd be sitting there like,
oh, yeah, get that money.
I'm hitting July 1st, baby. Like, I might want to be a Flyer. Even if you're him and you're like, listen, I know that this system that we're running, where it's block shot, head up, outlet pass, is exactly what we need. I know that, I get to join the rush whenever, I get to start the rush whenever I want. That plays into my skill set. I don't care. I want the most money. I'm going to hit July 1st. I am taking the biggest deal. Someone's going to give me 5 times 5. Good for you. That means you need to trade him. I like Shawn Walker a lot. I do not think he's irreplaceable. Who was Shawn Walker before this season? He's going to be traded, right?
I mean, I expect that. My guess is that Nick Seeler gets re-signed. Right now, I am still of the mind that I think Shawn Walker gets traded. I've been really diving in with my sources on Walker, much more so than Seeler. I think more or less because I think Nick Seeler is going to be re-signed. Walker is the one I've been really poking around on and trying to figure out, okay, what's going on here. My understanding of the situation with Walker is, First off, the reports and rumors that the two sides have talked contract, like, they're true. The two sides have. Like, this is not a smoke screen of the Flyers are making this up to drive up the price. The Flyers have talked to Shawn Walker's camp about how much it would cost. The two sides are a little bit apart. It's not like they are in full agreement on what a contract would look like. But I am of the belief that the two sides are close enough that both sides know that if it gets down to it, they can find a middle ground. That all it really will take is a couple days of hard negotiating and a little bit of give and take here and there on the years or on the dollars or whatever. They can get a contract done if they have to or they want to. What's happening is right now, the Flyers are still very much listening. And if we are now 72 hours from the trade deadline and serious negotiations have not really begun yet, I think that's telling. And I think that's telling that the Flyers are still leaning towards trading him. The offers they've gotten have not been bad. They have not been everything that Brier wants, but they've been pretty good offers. Teams want Shawn Walker. There are quite a few teams that are interested in the guy. It's just that no one has offered up the, like, here's the first round pick, no conditions, no strings, here you go. That would be, all right, we're doing the deal. What they've gotten are offers that kind of dance around, get almost to that, but not quite. So Danny's waiting. But they haven't been lowballed enough that Danny has gone back to Walker's camp and said, all right, best thing we're getting offered is a 4th round pick, so let's talk contract. I just feel like, is a contract still possible? Sure. And honestly, I think it's more defensible than people are giving it credit for, because Walker has been real fucking good for the Flyers this year. That Walker-Seeler pairing, by far their best pairing, by far their most consistent pairing. If you're looking at play driving ability this season among NHL defensemen, Shawn Walker is the 3rd best play driving defenseman by expected goal impact. And I'm going by Evolving Hockey's RAPM model, which isolates expected goal impact from an individual player side. He's 3rd best defenseman in the league. He's been real friggin' good. In an ideal world, I would want to bring Shawn Walker back on a 2, 3, even 4-year deal, because he's been friggin' awesome for the Flyers. He's a big reason why they're at where they're at. But he is going on 30 years old. He is in the midst of a career year. He does have an expiring contract, and he's going to cost a decent amount of money. I just think on some level, the Flyers have to realize that as much as they love him, it does make more sense to move him.
He's the one where, like, I can understand the idea of bringing Nick Seeler back because it's not going to break the bank. He's part of the culture, all that stuff, worked his way up. I mean, who was he a year and a half ago? Who is he now?
And 2 years ago, he was considering retiring.
Exactly. No, like, his contract got terminated, I think, in Minnesota, and it was like, well, where'd he go after that? And I looked at Hockey DB to see if he was in some other league. He wasn't.
Yeah.
He was just, and now he's who he is. Like, Walker is the guy where it's, I don't want to pay you. Maybe he's this good. I doubt it. Like, I don't want to pay you for your career year and a contract year.
Yeah,
that seems fucking stupid to me. That seems like not negotiating from a place of strength. Now, the idea that maybe, especially a Walker, doesn't get an extension done right away, but they don't trade him. Do you think, I've heard this theory, and I think it might have some merit. Danny Briere, first-year GM, very first trade deadline. Send the message that you're not going to be taken advantage of. Guess what? You don't get him then. And you hang up the phone and you're willing to walk away. GMs are going to test if he's willing to do that or not, especially considering what happened to Chuck Fletcher a year ago.
Yeah.
Why is Chuck Fletcher? I said this to JP last night. Everyone in the organization likes Chuck Fletcher. He's not here because the fan reaction, like the season ticket holder reaction was, renew my tickets. The guy running the organization's a moron. Click.
Yeah, right.
And that's why he's not here anymore.
Yeah.
Is Danny Briere, maybe he has so much leeway in the office, he's like, I don't give a shit. I ain't getting fired. Who are they going to replace me with? Maybe that's true. Do you think that, like, do you think he's going to be willing to walk away and just go, I'll keep him?
It's a fascinating question, and that's one of the big ones that we're going to
set a tone for the rest of his career.
We're going to find out over the next 72 hours. It's a really interesting question because I'm sure that is playing into his thinking. Because, look, I don't know if you've ever directly talked to Danny Briere. I've talked to him a bunch of times over the last 3-4 years.
Just once this summer.
Yeah. He is, and he comes off as an exceedingly nice man.
Yeah, he's
like exceedingly nice. And he's definitely the kind of guy where if you're in a room with him once, you might come away from that conversation and think like, oh, this dude's a fucking pushover. Like, I will be able to strong arm this dude into doing whatever I want him to do. So maybe there is an element for Briere of, I want to show that I'm not the nice guy I seem to be. Because Chuck Fletcher, as you said, really good guy. People in the organization loved him. It seems like he was just as nice of a guy when dealing with agents and other GMs as he was in dealing with everyone. And sometimes you kind of need a little bit of a hard ass. Like, there was that Athletic poll a few years ago where agents ranked him as their favorite GM to deal with. And I think you made the point of like, is that really what you want your GM to be winning?
No, I want him to be dead last. Of course here you go, fucking Rasmus, whatever you want.
Yep. Yeah. Like every agent would love him, of course.
We just brought in a coach to evaluate everyone, but I'm giving Travis Sanheim 8 years first. Like, no.
Yeah. So I do
anyway,
think, I do think there is probably part of that Briere wants to set a tone for his tenure that he's not going to be taken advantage of. However, I don't get the sense that the offers he's gotten so far have been insults. Like, it would be one thing if everybody was offering him third-round picks and being like, well, what are you going to do? You're going to keep him? You won't do it, Danny. You won't do it. I get the sense they're getting good offers. They're not good enough offers for them to do the deal immediately, but they're not bad enough offers that they feel like other teams are trying to take advantage of the first-year GM who doesn't know what he's doing. To me, again, the fact that the two sides, and by the two sides, I mean Walker's camp and the Flyers, have not yet gone all in on negotiating a contract or starting to try to, that tells me that the Flyers still have in their heads trading Walker is probably the play. The one thing, though, and you mentioned this about the idea of it being an own rental situation, the point I made in my column on Saturday about the Walker situation is that I could envision a scenario where signing back Walker makes sense, but it would have to involve them making serious other changes to the defense. It would have to involve them trading Rasmus Ristolainen, maybe involve them trading somebody else away who we're not expecting to be on the market because, like, okay, now you're moving out Emil Andre in a trade for an impact forward, or you're trading Cam York in a trade for Trevor Zegras or something like that. Then suddenly it's like, maybe keeping Shawn Walker makes some sense. If you kept him as an own rental, you would have his rights until July 1st. It would give you more time to see how your defense might shake out and if you actually can fit Shawn Walker. However, in the here and now, I have trouble figuring out where Shawn Walker fits because you've got Jamie Drysdale. You have Travis Sanheim, who plays better on the right side. You have Rasmus Ristolainen under contract for another few more years. You have Oliver Bonk on the way. You have Ronnie Adder banging down the door. I just don't know where he fits right now. And if you're going to re-sign him, you better have a plan to make it make more sense that he's still here. Because in the here and now, it doesn't make any sense. Where does he fit?
He doesn't.
Yeah.
And he's been good.
And I really like him, but I just don't know where he fits.
He really fits what they do.
He does.
And
Stylistically, he does.
Stylistically, he's been, we can say Travis Sanheim with all the points he's put up this year. But I don't know. Both ends of the ice, the puck moving, I think he's been their best defenseman in that regard. And he could score a little bit. Like, we've seen him with shorthanded goals on the rush. One-on-one he's scored. He's a good player. I just don't know. With what I think he's going to command on the market, I don't want to pay it for a guy who's done this one time.
So here's my question. Let's look at the three possible outcomes of the Shawn Walker situation. We have they trade him. We have they keep him and don't re-sign him. We have they keep him and re-sign him. It's very clear you were on the trade him. How angry would you be if out of the other two scenarios? Like, let's say scale 1 to 10. How angry are you if they keep him as a rental and then let him leave for nothing on July 1st? And then how angry are you if they re-sign him?
Leave for nothing, that's an 8 or a 9.
Okay.
That's horrible. It's the opposite of what you do in a rebuild.
Okay.
You get assets. Even I don't love the idea, but you'll get something if you trade his rights after the season. Yeah, whatever.
But you might get like a 4th or 5th.
Yeah. But re-sign him. I'll be, depending on the price, not in love with it, but it's then about, all right, you better have a plan. And then we will judge that plan. But like on the face of it that day, I'm going to be like, what are we doing here? He's 30 years old.
It's fair.
We're rebuilding. This is not what you do. That would be frustrating. A couple of guys I want to mention before we move on to some other business. Is it weird that we haven't heard Garnet Hathaway's name at all? Like, I know that they like him and they want to keep him and they signed him for a reason, but he got moved at the deadline last year. He's exactly who I would want to bring in if I was like one of the. He's
he is absolutely a playoff type guy.
$2.375 million through next year, so it's not like he's breaking the bank. He's also through next season, so he's not just a rental. I would love to add this guy to a playoff team.
Yeah, they're not trading him.
Is that just known?
They like him so much.
Okay,
and he has another year left on his contract. I think this is a conversation that we'll be having next year.
Okay.
As to whether, he's a rental, he's older. Do you really even want to re-sign him? Maybe we cash him in for assets. They love Garnet Hathaway. I really like Garnet Hathaway. He's a really fun player to watch.
He's great.
He is like the epitome of the ideal guy on a fourth line who keeps both the new school and the old school happy.
Yeah.
He does all the old school things, but he also like drives play and actually can play hockey well.
Did you see last night? It was, I don't know how well you could see it. Maybe you looked up at the broadcast. He gets in a net front scrum, believe it or
with
not.
his helmet like
his
twisted.
Helmet fucking twists around and he's looking out the ear hole. Like that guy he's gold, man. I know he's not a rental. I just thought like, someone must have called.
I mean, I'm sure someone called to check in.
Yeah.
And Danny was like, look, if you want to offer us a first-round pick for Garnet Hathaway, we'll listen, but you won't. So this doesn't make any sense. You're probably better off looking elsewhere. They really like Garnet Hathaway. He's playing on the line that Torts is the most happy with right now with Poehling and Cates right now. Like, it's functionally kind of their top line. No, Hathaway is not going anywhere. You bring up also in this outline Mark Stahl. To me, the thing with Mark Stahl is, look, is it theoretically possible somebody tosses the Flyers a fifth-round pick for him? Sure. However, the complication for Mark Stahl is everybody's hurt. Like, if Drysdale and Risto were still healthy, I think they might be a little bit more like pushing Stahl on people, like, in the email chain being like, by the way, we got Mark Stahl. Anybody want Mark Stahl? Mark Stahl? I don't think they're excited about trading Mark Stahl now for anything because he's playing every night because they don't have a choice. And if they move Walker, then they have even more reason to keep him.
If the trade deadline was March 18th instead of March 8th, would there maybe more of an appetite? Like,
well, depending,
depending
on if Drysdale or Risto can come back.
I was just saying, with not a full month's worth of games left. Maybe they've fallen out of it a bit.
Oh, you mean the
can
Flyers.
Get Adder and Andre in there.
Yeah. If
maybe they don't want him to play 20 games, but if it's 10, that's a different story.
Maybe. I do think that a lot of this also comes down to the fact that they're in a playoff race. If they were, because you mentioned, giving Adder and Andre a shot. If the Flyers were, 10 points out of a playoff spot right now, then yeah. Then they are probably calling up the young guys to give them a look. Brent Flair straight up told me that in the interview I did with him a few weeks ago when I was talking about the prospects. Like, look, last year we probably do call up Tuomaala for 3 games to give him a taste. This year we're in the midst of a playoff race. Like, unless we fall out of it, I don't think we're calling up Samu Tuomaala for an audition. We would only call him up if we think he can help us make the playoffs. Well, in this situation, they're not going to be concerned about clearing out spots for a Ronnie Adder or an Emil Andre because they're more concerned about winning games. That's just the nature of where they're at.
Charlie, this show and every show, as many people know, presented by our friends at Mortgage CS. And I think you have a little bit to tell us about our good pals.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been open. Me and you have both been open about the fact that we bought houses in the not so distant past. I bought my house in September of 2022, so before I met Ben and Alec. But I can tell you, we met with these guys in person, and they're definitely the kind of people that you want advising you in what is a very difficult decision and a very time-consuming and at times very frustrating decision. Like right now, people are reaching out to Mortgage CS. People are reaching out to anyone, their realtor, their broker, whatever. They're reaching out because they want to be ready for when the rates drop. The expectation is that they might drop at some point this year. The thing is that everybody's doing that. Everyone is doing once those interest rates drop, I want to be ready. Everyone is going to be looking to buy when that happens. If you want to be ready to take advantage of it, you want to have people you trust. And I can tell you that these guys, we've met them, we've talked to them. They are the kind of people that you want advising you in this kind of situation in what is really a life-changing decision. Buying a house is one of those key, especially your first house. I mean, this was my first house.
Terrifying.
It's terrifying. It is scary.
You just sign in your name.
It's scary. And what you want is people to talk to who you trust. I was lucky I had a realtor that I really trusted. I would have loved to have had these guys. That would have been amazing. So
I learned more about the process talking to them for half an hour than I did buying the house.
Exactly. So, whether you're a first-time home buyer like I was, or you're looking to refinance, which people might be looking to do if they bought a house 2 years ago and the rates were at 8%, and if they drop, you're potentially looking to refi. Or if you just want to know what you have to do to qualify for a mortgage when you're ready, Mortgage CS, I really think should be a consideration no matter your situation. There are a plethora of mortgage brokers out there. Many of them will promise the best rates. Many of them will promise you basically anything to get you to sign on the dotted line. That isn't these guys. The reason you should consider Mortgage CS, they're honest, good people, and they will always work hard not to let your clients down. I trust them. I think they will really help you out in what is coming into a year where everyone, I think, is going to be rushing to buy a house.
So when you hear the word mortgage, think of Mortgage CS. Think of Ben and Alec. Save Ben's telephone number, 267-391-7425 to your phone. Email Ben at mortgagecs.com. Call or text anytime, day or night. And if you're not in the housing market, maybe you're looking down the line a little bit, just talk some Philly sports. What should the Flyers do at the deadline? I bet he'll have an answer for you on that as well. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to get started. This advertisement is not a commitment to lend or extend credit. Mortgage CS is an equal housing opportunity mortgage broker. All loans are subject to credit approval. Certain restrictions may apply. Company NMLS ID number 1464766. Visit mortgagecs.com for more information. All right, so Charlie,
we got one more guy, more trade deadline guy.
Who's left?
Our buddy Scott Laughton.
Oh, Scott Laughton. I am so beyond the idea. I guess it's possible if certain other dudes get traded and some team misses out and they're like, no, gotta have something. Screw it. Here's everything for Scott Laughton.
Right.
To me, it's an off-season thing. It was always an off-season thing. It's just with the term left, what he means to a team going into a playoff run as this one is. Like we just had that whole conversation with Nick Seeler. Well, guess what? Scott Laughton was the de facto captain until Valentine's Day. I can't imagine they're in a big hurry to move him. Also, Keith Jones just looked us in the face and said, we're not trying to trade him.
Yeah, if you overpay, we'll trade him.
Someone calls us up and says, hey, here's everything. Yeah. They're going to take it.
I was when Jonesy said that, you know what I was thinking of? I was thinking of that rumor, and it's funny, it's actually very appropriate for the day it is because of what happened yesterday with the Flyers playing the Blues and Kevin Hayes. It reminded me of that rumor about when Frank Saravalli reported that one of his buddies ran into Kevin Hayes and asked Kevin Hayes if he was going to sign with the Flyers, and Hayes was like, well, yeah, if they overpay me. And that's kind of the thought that ran through my head when Jonesy said that. And they did. They did. They sure did. But anyway, here's my thing with Scott Laughton. And I posted this in our Discord for diehards. So if you're not a diehard, these are the kind of conversations that we have. Me and the other people in the Flyers section of the Discord were talking probably for a good 2 or 3 hours today about all of this stuff, just chatting. It was honestly a really good time. It's the kind of conversations that are harder to have on Twitter these days because people are batshit. But the point I made about Scott Laughton is this, and this is kind of where I have fallen on the Laughton at the deadline discourse. I don't want them to trade Scott Laughton at the deadline.
Really?
No, I do not. And my reasoning in truth is this. Number one, this is the functional part of it, is I don't think his value is going to be any less in the offseason than it is now. So I don't see what the urgency is unless someone goes crazy and is like, we need this guy for the playoff run, and they offer a Tanner Jeannot package for Scott Laughton. Yeah, I get that. That's a deal you can't turn down. You just do it. But if that doesn't happen, I think they should keep Scott Laughton. And here's my reasoning. Aside from the fact that I think you could do the deal if you really want to in the summer anyway, there's been a lot of talk when we talk about this idea of an own rental of someone like Shawn Walker. And a lot of talk about, does this team deserve to see it through given how they've played? You can't destroy this team given that they earned the right to go through. I don't buy that the team has earned the right to see this through. You know what I do buy? I buy that Scott Laughton has earned the right to see this through.
That's fair. That's very fair.
I think that there is an element here of you don't want to be thought of as an organization that treats your players like shit. And to me, Scott Laughton has been a major part of we've talked so much about the importance of culture, about the fact that this team has overachieved, that they're playing above their talent level. Scott Laughton is one of the probably top 3, if not number 1 on the list of guys that have created the culture that has allowed them to overachieve this season. I think it would be really shitty if you get rid of that guy and don't let him see it through to the end. Whether that ends in a playoff spot, whether it ends in a first-round exit, whether it ends in a Cinderella playoff run, I don't know. But I feel like it's the right thing for the organization to do to not pull that away from Scott Laughton now. I just think it would be a shitty thing to do. And I don't think, Walker and Seeler, it's a different story because they're expiring contracts. If you're going to get something for them, you got to get it for them now. You can't be too sentimental. But I think you can be a little sentimental. And I think Scott Laughton, with what he has given to this organization, I think he warrants a little bit of sentimentality. And if that means not trading him at this deadline, I'm fine with that.
And I fall along the same lines for a bit different reason. What we want to ask, what's your ideal trade deadline? I want both defensemen, maybe all 3, including Mark Stahl, traded.
Fair.
If they keep Nick Seeler and it's under $3 million, I guess I can live with it. I still think that's an overpay, but whatever. Scott Laughton, I want held on to until the summer. Because you just said I don't think his value goes down. I think it actually goes up.
You think it goes up?
I think when the Flyers make the playoffs and
people watch Scott Laughton
take Carolina
in the playoffs
to 7 or something, win around, whatever it might be, and then a team like Toronto, who are the serial, oh my God, what just happened? We blew it somehow. Team, when they get the shit kicked out of them by Florida, they're going to go, how can we be more like Florida? And they will go, you talked about the Tanner Jeannot package? Here you go for Scott Laughton. And
it's a fair point.
Problem solved. Now you've actually gotten more for Scott.
And you're already...
And it also feeds into my other desire. This team, when they're really going to need assets, is down the line. Because if you want to open up that window, that means you have to continually be restocking, but also have enough to go buy when you need to buy when you have a chance to win it all. You do that when Michkov gets here, having extra assets.
It's a reasonable point.
Ask for futures for Scott Laughton, 2025, 2026. Now you have something to spend when it's time to spend, and you also still get to draft and hopefully be able to replenish your system so you don't have a 2-year window, you have a 7-year window.
It's a reasonable point. And I do think, speaking to your argument about if teams see him do Scott Laughton things in the playoffs, they might be more willing to overpay for him in the summer. I don't know if this is the reason why he's playing better, but I know how hockey men think. His surge over the last few weeks may just be because he was cold and now he's hot and it just happened to be right now. But the story that people in the game are going to tell themselves is that when the game started mattering more, Scott Laughton upped his game.
Oh, yeah.
That's the story they're going to tell. Because Scott Laughton right now, if Ryan Poehling isn't the 1C right now, it's Laughton. Yeah. Laughton might be their 1C at the moment.
No, it's going to be mini Tkachuk theory. Matt Tkachuk, October, November, December.
He's darn good player.
He was fine.
Yeah.
Playoff Tkachuk. He was fine. January 1st came. Oh, he's the best fucking player in hockey again.
Exactly.
No, that it's going to be. And listen, these two players are worlds apart, but you see how teams talk themselves into this dumb shit. I just talked myself into re-signing Nick Seeler, even though I don't want to. You see how teams do these things. All right.
Yeah. So we do have a comment. I do want to read this because
Okay.
it's interesting from JC's. and I will read out the tweet from Frank Saravalli. It more or less matches what we have just spent the last half an hour talking about.
Oh, I read it wrong.
The tweet is still 3 days to go, but sounds increasingly unlikely that the Flyers will be re-signing both Shawn Walker and Nick Seeler. They've got a good feel now on what both will cost. Meantime, they're fielding trade offers for both and will weigh return versus extension. One likely trade it. I did just predict about 10 minutes ago that Shawn Walker is traded and Nick Seeler is re-signed. I'm just saying it kind of lines up with what the insiders are tweeting out in the moment. That has always been my expectation. It remains my expectation.
In order to keep one, whichever one.
Right.
They need to get the deal done prior to 3 o'clock Friday, right?
Well,
like,
not necessarily.
I mean, like, I guess you can have the agreement in principle, but I don't want to miss the trade deadline and then have a question mark.
It's fair. I think it's probably, it's not necessary, but it is best for public relations that if you keep Shawn Walker, you have a contract to extension to announce. If you keep Nick Seeler, you have an extension to announce. It's not like, well, we kept him because we didn't have good enough offers and we're going to keep negotiating with him over the next month. It might play out that way, that they ultimately re-sign Nick Seeler to a 3-year contract worth $2.75 million a year. But in the interim, people are going to lose their damn minds.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Maybe Danny is just doing us all a favor and saving everything for Friday. And hopefully it's between maybe the hours of 2 and 4. Well, I mean, like the deadline's at 3. But you know what I'm saying. I am just trying to get us to the chicken or the egg. That's right. The Chegg on Friday, our trade deadline watch party, live from Marlton, New Jersey. It is going to be a hell of a time. Join us there. Have a few drinks, whether it's in celebration or in anger. We will be drinking.
Drowning your sorrows or cheersing to good moves.
As this team is, destined to do, we will drink because of them. Like, that's what happens. Whether it's celebration or in anger, that's what happens. Join us at the Chegg for Friday, March 8th. That's this Friday, 2 to 4. We'll be live. Kelly will be there. JP will be there. Charlie will be joining us, hopefully from Florida.
From Tampa, I will
comment from Danny B.
We will be interviewing Danny Briere. We have been told we will be getting Danny Briere in Tampa somewhere.
So
it might be in the lobby of a hotel. I don't know.
He's going to net 3 first-round picks and just be smoking a cigar on Miami Beach.
Oh, my God. That would be the greatest thing ever.
Just bottomless.
We're literally at a bar on the beach in Tampa, and Danny's just puffing away like, yeah, I'm the shit. You doubted me? You doubted me? Well, guess what?
Oh, my God.
Look at me now.
Hopefully he's saving it all for Friday. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Join us at the Chicken or the Egg. The Chegg on Friday in Marlton. It's going to be a great time. All right. That leaves us with today's date, Charlie. March 5th, 2024. 20 years ago today. The greatest game in Flyers.
I mean, for you, it very well might have been.
Until
they win a cup, that might be your favorite game.
So it's the greatest game.
It's the greatest game.
20 years ago today, it was a Friday in March the 5th, 2004. The Flyers and Senators engaged in a game in which 419 penalty minutes, so close, were registered.
So close to being nice.
So close. It all started about a week prior when Martin Havlat swung his stick and hit Mark Recchi in the face. They said they were going to get payback. Martin Havlat hid. There was a whole bunch of fights that didn't involve him in that one. It was so much goddamn fun. I am trying to track down the Broad Street Hockey Drunk History episode we did, where I did a breakdown of this game. But I just wanted to share a few memories of that night because I remember it vividly. I gotta find it. Maybe I'll try to find it today. A VHS tape of the replay of this.
You taped it.
Because Friday night, the night of the game, that's where me and all my friends, Friday nights, we hung out at Hollydale for open skate.
Okay.
That's what we did. And in the snack bar, I remember looking up at the TV and going, yeah, like John LeClaire and Mark Recchi are fighting. Something is fucked up, and there's no sound. So we're like, what is happening?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say you were at the bar. I'm like, how old were you in 2004?
I'm actually 62 years old. No, we were at Hollydale, and I looked up, and I was like, wait, what? What? Like, why is John LeClaire in a fight right now? Something is wrong.
Yeah.
And then, like, you get home, and you find out all about it. And I remember Michael Barkan in postgame is like, we're showing a replay of this tomorrow.
Yeah, don't worry.
So
if you
break out
missed
your
it,
tapes. And I actually taped it on VHS. Do you remember anything of like where you were that 20 years ago, Charlie?
The funny thing is, I don't remember where I was. I remember watching. I probably just watched it at home, probably with my mom, because I used to watch all the hockey games with my mom when I was still living at home, because I would have been in high school at the time. I guess I was in high school.
304, I was a freshman.
Yeah, well, then maybe I was in 8th grade, because I'm a year younger than you.
Yeah.
So I must have been in 8th grade. So I'm sure I watched it at home. I don't remember the specifics, but I do. The one I remember the most was Sharp versus Spezza.
Yeah.
That was the best. Because, like, yeah, the heavyweight battles are fun and they're great. But, like, these are two guys that you never think are ever going to fight.
I think the one I always remember is, I think it was Recky's elbow pad came loose. And he was just hitting the guy. Like, he's throwing punches, but really he's hitting him with his elbow pad.
Man.
Like, it was just, man, there hasn't been anything close to, I mean, I guess the Ray Emery brawl with the Caps was somewhat similar, but this one was just different, man. Like, there hadn't been anything like it in a long time, and there hasn't really been anything like it since, to the point, like, yeah, like, Kevin Kurtz wrote about it.
Yeah,
but like
DGB.
DGB broke it down this week.
Yeah.
Like, this was a fucking seminal moment that people still talk about.
Yeah.
A lot of the fights weren't great.
It was just the sheer number.
It was just how many there were.
It was the spectacle of
yes, it was really.
Well, you're seeing it now we talked about it before the show, me and Bill, about Rempe in New York. Look, I very much understand the argument against fighting. I understand that there's a case to be made that with what we know about concussions, that fighting isn't the best. What is undeniable is that I would venture to wager that the vast majority of hockey fans now, like people who already like hockey, love this shit. They love it. And there's a reason why Rempe is becoming like a folk hero within 2 weeks, because people love this shit. They love it. And it's always going to be loved by existing hockey fans. Now, you can make the case that it cuts down on the amount of people you can pull into the sport. I'm skeptical of that, but I understand the argument. But the people who already love hockey, they eat this shit up, man. They eat it up.
Who are these new fans, and why haven't we found them yet? Like, this is season 19 since the lockout.
It's fair.
They open the game up. It's all about skill. The shootouts that you still hate, that you went on and on about last night. Like, where are these fans? Cater to the ones you have, because the new ones, I've never met them.
There's something to be said about making sure you keep your people happy.
Yeah, and like that's one of the big issues people had with like the previous Flyers regime, is that they were trying to cater to a fan base that didn't exist.
Yeah.
And it was like, you have a building full of season ticket holders, maybe throw them a bone.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
and
this group definitely is. Without a doubt.
And
without
look at what has happened.
Yeah.
The building is full again. Yeah. People are not nearly as mad now.
They're still mad.
Friday,
they're just not as mad.
Friday could change all of that. But from October to today, they're not nearly as mad as they were the last 4 years. So it's working. But that's my whole thing. Listen, these are consenting adults. If they want to give each other brain damage, feel free.
That's kind of where I'm at with it. I put that in my articles, that like, look, I think that all the players in the game, from the lower levels to the NHL, need to be made fully aware of the risks and what could possibly happen down the road. But if those players are made aware of the risks, if they've been told what could happen, and they still choose to beat each other's heads in, I don't feel like I have the right to tell them they can't.
Yeah, and that's hockey, baby. All right, we're out of time, but I'm gonna throw this Michkov theory at you, because I threw it at JP last night. Now I'm gonna be mad if they do this thing that everyone was mad about earlier this week, where they sell nobody.
I was like, which thing? There's a lot of things they're mad about.
They sell nobody, they keep everyone,
and they like trade a fifth round pick for somebody.
They bring in a goalie or a veteran forward or something. That's gonna make me upset.
Mm-hmm.
I will retroactively say I was wrong under one condition.
Okay.
If they know something we don't know, and Matvei Michkov is coming over sooner than later, and by that I mean next season.
Like now.
Like he joins for the fucking playoffs. Like he's here at camp August, September, Matvei Michkov is a Flyer, then okay, investing in some 30-year-old defensemen makes sense to me. Keeping Scott Laughton makes, like, all that shit will retroactively make sense if you have a dynamic forward on an ELC coming over and you plan on being a lot better than you were this year, next year.
Yeah, and a number one goalie on a like $1.5 million a year contract.
And like if Sam Harrison, is here and like he's this good or better, like and all that, maybe you bring over Kolosov too. Why not bring everyone over?
It's an intriguing theory.
Now, I don't think it's going to happen.
I can tell you that I have heard nothing to tell me that Michkov's early arrival is imminent. But hey, it would be fun. It would certainly help our show.
It would. And now, before we get out of here, I got to tell you about FOCO. FOCO has the absolute best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms, whether it's hoodies, jackets, beachwear, or overalls. There's something for fans for almost every occasion. If you're in that market for accessories, toys, or collectibles for your man cave, she shed, or podcast set, you've got to use FOCO for all your team gear needs. FOCO always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in the description of this show. For all non-presale items, use promo code PHLY10 for 10% off. I got to tell you, PHLY10 FOCO. And once you get all this awesome team gear, maybe you're looking for somewhere to wear it. Wear it to our takeover, March 14th.
Yes.
Flyers and Leafs meet up in the assembly room with me, Charlie, Kelly, the whole PHLY Flyers crew, all PHLY.com/events. And it's Pearl Jam night. And that, of course, this takeover, not Pearl Jam night. The takeover is brought to you by our friends at Olipop, a new kind of soda that's honestly pretty damn good. As someone who drinks a lot of soda and feels guilty about it, I can now do it without that guilt with Olipop. So make sure you get your tickets to the takeover, Flyers Leafs, March 14th. Make sure you're at Chicken or the Egg on this Friday, March 8th from 2 to 4 for our live trade deadline show. And that's it. All right, my name is Bill Matz for Charlie O'Connor. Have a great week, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.